think it was like 13 outfits. That was all she was looking for was outfits. So like newborn stuff. She got 13 outfits for like $70. I was like, that's awesome. That's so good. So much better than the 2 that she would get from Target for that. So yeah. Yeah, oh my gosh. Okay, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. All right, dudes. I'm saying it like I'm talking. That's what I say. That's what I say to the teenagers. All right, dudes. So let's see what's going on this week. So, dudettes, we can say that too. Yeah, because that's just I'm the only dude in here, right? I can hear me. I think Jason fixed the sound. Jason, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that is gonna be difficult. That's gonna be difficult, huh? Just a little bit. It's fine. Yeah, it would just be like somebody snapping just the entire time that we like. Oh man. Yeah. So I just want to address the elephant in the room. I felt. Well, Laurie told me that you guys may have criticized my decision to go to the beach so early. Is that? Oh, made fun of me. Okay, that feels a little bit better. Yeah. I will confirm that it was very cold. Yeah. So the beach was nice. It was relaxing, but it was very cold. So we go this week every year, and I keep telling my parents because I'm a mountain guy. I'm like, man, let's go to fly to Yosemite or something and just like stay. And I don't know, maybe that's more expensive, but my family. They're just like, we've got, this one condo and this one beach and these like 4 restaurants that we always go to. And I think that my family now has gotten to the point where that is what will always happen until they pass away. like like that's just yeah, and I'm cool with it. It's fun. It was great. It was a lot of fun, and the water was a little cold, but not too cold for the babies. They would like go out there and go and, come back. So that was a lot of fun. Yes. Yes. This is their second time. This is their second time. So the last time with us too, just like that, yeah. Uh, but the last time that we went was a year ago, and that was the first time for them. And I mean, the same thing. Like they played in the sand the whole time, the water, everything. And so it was cool. I was grateful to take that time and stuff though too. So that was super good. But now Marshall's taking that time, so he's in DC. I don't know what he's doing today. And they've been to DC a couple of times. Hey, Linda. They've been to DC a couple of times. Maybe this might be their second or third. But that's what Tyson wanted to do. Tyson said, "Let's go. Let's get out of here." So I'm excited to see pictures from that. How many of you guys have been to DC? Has everybody been to DC? Not quite. Okay. I feel like it's definitely you need to at least go once or maybe twice in your life. Really? Yeah. Yeah. Uh huh. Uh huh. You're not learning, you're experiencing. Yosemite. Yosemite, a national park. Learning, relaxing, and stars. Different stars. Not going to California. Yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, you're not going to find any stars out at Yosemite. Those. Yeah, maybe. He's there. He's there, right? Roadrunner. Oh, I would love Montana. Hmm. Uh, or Aurora Borealis. That's what it is. If I'm gonna see the Aurora Borealis, I'm like we're in Alaska. Like we've made the trip like all the way there. But man, I mean, you guys know Marshall, and I wasn't here for the like First and Second Kings, First and Second Chronicles study, but the man kind of likes history a little bit. But just a little bit, yeah. And I mean the examples that he uses and stuff, he knows his stuff. DC, that to me, that's like the pinnacle of vacations for him. And I have some other friends I think that are now and they're seeing the cherry blossoms. They're all, oh man, that's cool. I do wish I could see that. I went, I think it was like my freshman year of high school, and I remember it, but I think I would have a better appreciation of it right now. So
Well, my son, we went all around DC. I mean, yeah, DC and all that. We went to Gettysburg and all that.
awesome.
And he said, "I'm passed out."
He's passed out.
Sick of the past. He doesn't want to hear
Passed
it.
out.
Passed out. I thought it was cute.
I know that is. I was like, wait, what? Oh.
And he said, "I'm passed out."
Yeah, I went to. I think it was my sophomore year of college. I went to Greece, and so I mean, in your mind, you're just like the only thing I'm going to see is the past. You know, there's the cool. You can see the cool current things, but that's you go to see ancient stuff. And I think it was my third or fourth week there, and all the pictures that I posted are of all of these things. And my grandmother, who's now since passed, she commented, "Man, it's a lot of rubble." Like, and she helped me raise money to go, and she's like, "Man, I sent Brandon to go look at rocks." And I'm like, "No, but they're special rocks. They're different. They're historical rocks." Yeah, Mars Hill, and then the Parthenon and all that. So, it was cool sitting there on Mars Hill and like seeing what Paul would have seen, and then we had the dean of the Bible department that was like going through. I think it was Acts 13 or something where he like goes through it.
See, I was with a group like that, and so somebody said that this is Mars Hill, and I was like, "That's Mars Hill."
It is kind of an impressive.
Not what I thought.
Yeah, but it's cool. It is rubble though. It is the past. So yeah, but it's so cool. It's so cool. Anyways, I'm glad that y'all are here with us. I know that there's lots of when I say the majority of teenagers are gone on spring break, that is for sure the case. If they're like we had a connection group on Sunday night, and there was 4 of us, plus me and the kiddos and stuff. No. Yeah. We have lunch bunch today at Chick-fil-A, and I think that those same 4. Those same 3. That'll be good though. It'll be blessed and highly favored from the Lord. Yeah, and then we've got class on Wednesday at Starbucks, and I think that we'll have about the same. So this is good. This is nice because this feels normal. This feels good. So yeah, I'm glad that I get to be here with you guys and stuff today. So don't just wanna stay. Yeah. What? Yeah. Was that this month? No, I don't know about that. That's a good question. I'm not sure. Fun. Well, being the only male in the room normally with Marshall and stuff, I'm glad that he and I can be together on that. But he was the only male, I'm assuming, last class, and I'll be the only male. I thought it was fitting for us to talk about fashion and clothes and those kinds of things as we're getting into these chapters here in Ephesians chapter 4. So if you want to, we're going to go ahead. We're going to be in Ephesians chapter 4, which we've been in for the past couple of weeks. Marshall gave me the topics for today. He was like, "Man, go as far as you want, but like we're going to work through 20 to 24. And I was like, I think I'll just stay in those verses. And then I looked at them and I was like, oh no, we'll finish the chapter. And then as I started outlining it out, I was like, oh, for sure no. We are not getting through that. So if we can get through these 4 verses, I'll be very, very proud of myself. And I think Marshall will give me a slap on the back and I'll feel pretty good to go. Who knows? No. Yep, exactly. Well, I think about it and I'm like, oh man, yeah. Whenever I preach and stuff, it's about the same. It's about the same. So I think it's just part of that. But I told these ladies that walked in first, we're gonna have a quiz. We're gonna have a quiz. So you guys can keep track of your own points. I think that there are 10 questions about fashion and all like clothes and those kinds of things. And you can keep track of all the points, and we can see who is the most knowledgeable whenever it comes to points and everything as well. I will say a sophomore-aged boy, whenever I did this quiz with the teens, was the one that was the most fashionable, or the one that got the most, and it was actually Alex. Alex knew the most about fashion and Yeah, he was great. He was, I think, a good 2,000 points ahead. Anyway, all right. So I'll put this in front of us. I tried to put it up on the TV, but my millennialism was failing me, and I was not able to get it up on the TV. But the first question is this: when was the miniskirt invented? Was the miniskirt invented in the 1960s, the 1970s, 1950s, 1980s? 60s? Good to go. We can all have different answers. We're trying to. Whoever has the most or whoever has the most correct gets $10 or something. Marshall said that he would pay when he came back. All right. So 60s, 70s, 50s, 80s. All right. Go with the 60s. Answer is the 60s. Very nice. One. Yeah. Keep track. I think there's 10. Yeah. That's okay. Whenever we do it with the teenagers, they use their phones and then it shows scores and stuff. It's cool, but I was not about that today. All right. When do we consider that something is vintage? So when do we consider that something is vintage? Is it when it's more than 100 years old? When it is a decade old? It doesn't matter how old it is as far as it just looks retro. So Laurie's shirt is vintage even though... Yes, exactly. It says and it looks it, so it therefore is vintage, or when it's between 20 and 100 years. So more than 100 years, a decade, doesn't matter, or 20 to 100. I thought we were working together. She's betraying you now. Vintage. I know, that's the difficult part. Yeah. Well, so that's the thing is that, according to this definition, some of the things that I think are... It's not at least a decade. 20 to 100? Yeah. Because it's hard, because vintage is... Yeah. Yeah. 10 years ago... No, I still wear those clothes. Like... Yes. Yeah. All right. He would tell you. All right. The correct answer is between 20 and 100 years, which is crazy to think that. I mean, 20 years ago, that's 2003, 2002. Like, yeah. That doesn't seem like it's that long ago. I don't like that. Vintage wedding dress. Okay, next question. When was the first time that women wore pants in public? Women wore pants in public. And there's dates. 1920s, mid-1800s, in the late 1950s, 1970s. So 20s, mid-1800s, in the late 50s, 70s. 20s, 70s, 50s, 1800s. Nobody's wearing pants. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. 50s. Okay. She's going to be the dark horse. She's going to be the dark horse. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. See, that's what I'm thinking in the 20s. That's the 20s. And it's also vintage, so. All right. I guess the 20s is not vintage anymore, or that would be antiquity, right? In the 20s? I don't know. All right. The answer is in the mid 1800s. I don't know what date. I don't know if that's like. I wish I could tell you the for real date, but. It's this lady right here. She just said, "I'm wearing pants today." Yeah, I'm sure. That's Downton Abbey? I hadn't thought about that. That's the Yellowstone prequel, right? Yeah, this one surprised me. I would have probably said 20s. Yeah. Yeah. That's what Lou said too. She's like, if you're working out in the field, and if you're out here, then yes, you would wear. Yes, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking too. Apparently, sometime in the 1800s, which feel like I want proof of that too. I'm just saying. That's true. That's true. Fact check me. I'm just saying I know this is 100% accurate because I found it on the internet. And I did not fact check. So, all right. But I say that's a be all end all, okay? All right. Here, let's go a little bit farther. What did it mean if a woman wore light blue during the Renaissance? So, a woman wearing light blue during the Renaissance. It meant that she was married, that she was a widow, that she was single, or that she was a servant. So, wearing light blue in the Renaissance, married woman, a widow, single, servant. I have no context for this at all. Hmm. Renaissance. The Renaissance. The Renaissance. It's so interesting. I guess we kind of do that too with like wedding rings of like I'm telling you, here's my fashion, but I'm showing you a status. But we don't really do that with anything else, right? I don't think that we do. But they must, I mean, they must have. Don't wear blue because or you do? What's the answer for the pants? That's why it was such a. Mm. But they did it anyway. Nice. All right, what do we think? Married, widow, single, servant. Single. Single. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, this little blue. Oh, I'm just thinking of like young girls in a blue dress, like Alice in Wonderland. I don't know, but that's not even mildly Renaissance. All right, which decade do they represent? As I might need to. Yeah. Here. I was planning on having it on the. Looking at the picture, what decade are they dressed up as? I guess they might not be dressed up. They might be. I don't think it's an actual picture from this time period, but apologize. See, it'd be so much easier.
Watch the baby.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. All right, what do we think? This one was pretty easy. It's the 80s. Indeed. Tis the 80s. So I wish I could show you all the picture up here, but okay. This one, the only reason that I know is because a lot of people were telling me whenever we were overseas. Which city is known as the capital of fashion capitals? So it is the fashion capital of the world. Paris, Milan, London, New York. Everybody's got their answer? The answer is Milan. Yeah. I had some friends that wanted to go there just so that they could either say that they've been. I was like, well, what are you gonna see? Nobody's gonna be walking around in like dresses and stuff, right? But I mean, I guess it's the same thing like New York and London and stuff. It's just the capital. This is where the things happen. Nice. Okay. Oh man, what is this called? It's a small necklace that is wrapped tightly around the neck. Okay, well, it's a choker. That's correct. Yeah, choker. There you go. All right, so we actually had some teenagers get this wrong too, so let's see. It's the narrow platform that's used by models to present designer clothes. It's either called a bridge, a stage, a catwalk, or a street. Okay, that one was easy. That was a catwalk. I actually don't know why it's called a catwalk, but I'm assuming, you know, Got some cats walking in. Yeah. Yeah. And like a cat does, yeah. You don't realize how swanky a cat is until you like notice, and it's like, wow, they're like very elegant, like stepping over. It's yeah, yeah. Oh man, this one is difficult. That's all right. All right. So where are these outfits typically found or from? Let's see if we can get it. All right, and it's England, Poland, Czech Republic, or Germany. Right. Traditional garb here. I wear this only on Thursdays. I'm not gonna wear it in public at other times. Solid. Right. I was stuck between those two as well. So England, Poland, Czech, Germany. It is Germany. Very nice. How many? Who thinks they have the most points? I'm trying to think of. Well, you're disqualified. The cash prize is no longer there. Yeah. 2, 3. Okay. This one. What is this piece of clothing called? If you can't see it, it's socks that kind of go from your foot to your. They're not socks though. All right, it's either shoe warmers, foot warmers, leg warmers, or sock warmers. Man, see, that's so interesting to me. It is indeed leg warmers. Leg warmers. All right, last question. Boom. Last question. When was the disco style trendy? The disco style trendy. You've got 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Yeah, there's a picture of Elvis and a couple of other guys. It is the 70s. Disco was made more prominent in the 60s, but the style of disco, I think, was in the 70s. I think that's correct. Yeah, look at him. Yeah. Golly, bell bottoms. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. It was vintage. It's fine. All right. So we're in Ephesians chapter 4, and we'll get to why we're going through all that. Who had the most points, by the way? I think that was 10 questions. Anybody have? Did anybody get all? Yeah. Oh, at least 4. All right. All right. I'll tell Marshall that he just needs to bring a bunch of 10s. Yeah. Sorry, buddy. Bring some cash back from your vacation because you owe these ladies. All right, so real quick, before we get into that, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much would you say that you care about your appearance? Scale of 1 to 10. 10 being it's the most important thing ever, 1 being I could care less. Yes, the teenager said the same thing. Yes. I cared a lot in high school, and now I'm like, man, that was so dumb. They put so much effort into that. It's the most important thing. Yeah, not so much. Okay, so as you're kind of thinking about that question, so in reality, do you feel like our appearance matters to other people? Appearance matter to other people. That's true. Yeah, there's a lot more opinion. So Morgan's pregnant. There's a lot of people, and she says that, she's gotten more comments about her body than she ever has in her entire life. And, there's positives and negatives because she loves it of like, oh, you're pregnant. That's a cool moment. But she's like, people will say, oh, not just you're pregnant, but like, oh, you're so big for 23 weeks. Or you're very small for 23 weeks. Something's like, do we have I don't know. But people, like you said, yeah, it's like, oh, man. I saw a picture of a woman that was having quadruplets the other day. Oh, my goodness. That's incredible. How do people do that? Yeah. I think that each of us, and maybe I'll speak for myself, each of us do that on each in our own little levels and stuff. Because I'll be honest with you, whenever there's people out walking on the street and they look homeless and stuff like that, there's certain ways that I'll either approach or say, I'll prepare answers for some reason, as if I know that they're going to ask me for 1, 2, or 3, these kinds of things. I showed a couple of pictures to teenagers of homeless guys with scraggly beards and all that stuff, and then they were given a haircut from a professional barber and put in a suit and like cologne and all that stuff. And it's a stark difference of, well, if I saw that guy that was cut up and looking nice, if I saw him on the street, I would treat him very different than the way that, and that stinks, but I think that Lou is right. It's unfortunate that that matters to other people and that people will treat you differently. So let's kind of keep that in mind as we're working through that too. Yeah. Yeah, time to go over here on this side. That's fun. So it's interesting that how we choose to look on the outside, kind of like, I guess whether or not it's true or not, gives people an understanding of like who you are and your values. So the way that you dress and the way that you give yourself out and project yourself to other people, that's the same way that they. Gosh, she's so cute. No, you're good. It gives people an understanding of like, okay, I can treat you this way. Like you're from this socioeconomic like background, so I'll treat you this way. Whether it's right or not, that's true. So let's hold on to those thoughts really quick, okay? So we're here in Ephesians chapter 4. Marshall went through 17 to 19 last week, but that's where we're going to be just to kind of get us to where we are in verse 20. So let's read Ephesians chapter 4, starting in verse 17. I'm going to read from the ESV, the English Standard Version. He says this, "Now I say all of this and testify in the Lord that you must no longer walk as Gentiles do in the futility of their minds, because they're darkened in their understanding. They're alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that's in them due to their hardness of heart. And they've become callous and have given themselves up to sensuality, and they are greedy and eager to practice every kind of impurity." Nice. Now, I wasn't here to hear that lesson and everything, too. I'm sure that was a little difficult to talk about. This is the way that we were. As Gentiles before Christ, this is the way that we were. And I'm just that going through that list, we're futile in our mindset. Our mindset, even positive and negative, like no matter what, if we don't have Christ in our hearts, all of our endeavors, it's futile. It's coming and amounting to nothing. And we're darkened in our understanding. I think Marshall probably talked about this last week, that you can have the brightest and the most educated people in the whole world that are writing books and have won Nobel Prizes, and they've won and they're known for their minds, but they're darkened in their understanding because they've calloused and hardened their minds to the most important truth, and that's the truth of Jesus Christ. And so there's all of this knowledge and this good stuff, but it's all for nothing if you don't have Christ. And he says that we were all like that, darkened in our understanding, and we're alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that's in them. So we're separated because of that. And so he's talked about that, and he says and that they've become calloused, and they give themselves up to sensuality, and they're eager to practice every kind of impurity because they don't know any better. And he says that's what we used to be. And he says, "Now this I testify in the Lord that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do." We don't walk like that anymore. We're different. Because, what did he talk about to all this point? We're united. And Marshall has been walking through that and really helping us understand that we're united in all these things. We've got one Spirit, one Lord, one body, all of these things. And so he's saying, no matter what your background is, we all at one point didn't have Christ. We all at one point weren't these things. And then verse 20, he shouts it. He says, let me get to it. "But that's not the way that you learned Christ." And mine has an exclamation mark. I don't know about y'all. So I just feel like Paul's, and he, didn't have exclamation marks. "But that's not the way that you learned Christ." We're different. We're different from that because of Christ, right? So as Christians, we don't walk like we did in verses 17 through 19, right? Our lives should be inherently different because our lives are marked by Christ, right? And remember, Paul isn't in Ephesus. He's not talking to them. He's writing them a letter, right? He's writing them a letter. So how does Paul know what they have learned? Because he says it very, very poignantly. He's like, that's not the way that you learned about Christ. How does he know what they learned? How would he know? He started this thing. He was there for a long time, and he talked to a lot of these guys, probably the leaders that are still in place here in Ephesus and stuff. He talked with them. Does anybody remember how long he stayed in Ephesus the very first time that he was there? I'll give you a hint. It's greater than 1 year, less than 3 years. Hey, wow, 2 years, yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, I know. There's a million different answers in between that. uh, so he stays with them for 2 years. Now that's a pretty good sizable amount of time for him to form relationships and to teach everything that he knows concerning Christ, for him to be able to establish the church and get things prepared for him to leave and things too. So 2 years is a pretty long time. We know, a lot about the Ephesian church from Acts chapter 19. That's where we get some of these things. So he's constantly teaching and preaching in and out of the gospel, or in and out of the synagogue, in and out of the synagogue for 2 years. So he knows exactly what the core of these guys' values should be. Why? He's the dude that laid it. He laid the foundation for their thoughts and everything. He laid those things out, right? And right here, I love that Paul is like super black and white here. He's like, that's not the way that you learned in Christ. He says, he makes things really black and white. He says, now this is the way the Gentiles lived. X, 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 X. Here's all these things. He says, but that's not the way that we do it whenever we're marked by Christ. We're not these people. We are new people. We're different. I like how he just kind of says, this is the way that it is, black and white. We've had to do a bunch of, testing and stuff for the baby and blood work and, sonograms and all that fun stuff. And like, it's super cool. Our favorite part every time that we go to the doctor is to hear the heartbeat, because it's just so cute and beautiful, and you just hear it so fast and stuff. But you go and do I think it's the anatomy scan or test or something like that. They take a bunch of her blood and they're like, here's all the things that we're testing for. And it's not well, you might have, well, you could have, the baby could. It's yes, no. Why? Because we test the blood and we can tell, is there a presence for this? No. Is there a presence for this? Yes. And so it's not like, well, you have like, a little bit of poisonous blood, but like just a little bit, it's fine. It's like, yes, you're good, or no, you're not. And it's kind of like a litmus test, right? Where we can just say, okay, we do have these things, we don't have these things. And so what Paul's doing here is cool. It's like, well, let's look at our lives. Do I, and you can go down a little bit further to 25, which we're definitely not getting to today. Do I have falsehood in my life? Okay, well then that can tell me something about myself. Or am I speaking in truth? Right? And then he says in verse 26, be angry and don't sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. Are you angry all the time and letting those things continue on? Well, that's not the way that we should live. That's a different way. And it says, let the thief no longer steal. So if your life looks like stealing, then that's not where we need to be. We need to be different. Because in verse 20, he says it, that's not the way that you learned in Christ. There's a way that your life needs to look like when it's in Christ, and a way that your life should look whenever it's not in Christ. It's pretty black and white. And what's cool, and this is what Marshall's going to go through for, I think, the next 2 weeks or so, is kind of going through that list of this is what it looks like to put on Christ and have Christ in those things, and what it looks like to put off. So I'm going to leave that to him, because there's no way that I'm going to get there today or anything. But then he says this in verse 21. I'll just continue. He says, that's not the way that you learn in Christ, assuming that you have heard about him and were taught in him as the truth is in Jesus, right? So he's assuming, because there might be people that he didn't teach, right? That these people have what? Assuming that you have heard about him, so they've, at least heard about him. And there's lots of people in our lives that may not be Christians, but they've heard something. And then the next step is that not just hearing things, but they've been taught, right? They've been taught in him, so they've been taught about Jesus, and as the truth is in Jesus. So you've heard, and step forward into being taught because the truth is in Jesus. And so he's saying, if all these things are true, stick with me here. If all these things are true, if you've heard about Jesus, and if you've been taught about Jesus and you understand the truth of Jesus, then this is what's true. This is what we need to do. Does that make sense? It's a little muddled there, I feel like. Go for it. Can't guarantee I'll have an answer. Go for it.
It says, if indeed you have heard him and have been taught by him. Are there people here who may have actually heard Christ?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think of whenever Paul wrote this letter. There's a possibility. And I mean, Ephesus is quite a ways away from the Holy Lands, but it's possible. Yeah.
You've heard him, you've been taught by him, not been taught of him.
Yeah.
About him, you've been taught by him.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah. So that's why Marshall goes for the Greek all the time. He's like, man, this one word, that's different. Did these people meet Jesus? Or my gut tells me probably not. But I mean, think about the way that Paul teaches and preaches and stuff too. He even has the audacity to say, follow me as I follow Christ. Well, why don't you just say follow Christ, buddy? Well, he's pretty confident. He's like, man, look at the life that I live. And so there could be a thing where he says, man, if you understand Jesus, I mean, like all of us, we're all witnesses of Jesus, although we haven't met him. Like we understand who he is and feel the truth and feel like he is teaching us through the words of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Paul, right? And so did he teach us directly? No, but is he teaching me today, right now? I think so. So maybe, I would say, yeah, we'll need to ask Marshall next week because I'm actually not sure. I think it's probably unlikely, but I mean, I don't know. Paul wasn't that far removed from Jesus and stuff too. I think this is in the 60s. Marshall would probably slap my hand and say, 62? Yes. Yes. Every single Bible's like, hey, here's like a 10, 15, 20 year where it could be. So all that Paul is saying, right, is like, here's the life that the Gentiles lived. But we weren't taught that way in Christ because we've heard him, and we were taught by him, about him, and we understand the truth. And so since we're not like the Gentiles, we have had our minds enlightened because we've heard and been taught and we understand the truth. Then, here we go. Here's the fashion. 22. We need to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires. Checking to see how much time we got here. Put off. So I was trying to do my due diligence with Marshall's Greek stuff. And I love the way that he walks through these classes and stuff too, that we'll get down to see exactly what these things mean. It looks that the words put off and put on are pretty straightforward. We're taking something off. We're laying it aside. We're taking something that's here and we're putting it away. So something that's here, we're putting it away. Is it? I'll say it's pretty loud though. Yeah. I think you're right. I think it is the heater. No, we're good. Thanks, Paulette. So we're laying aside, we're taking off and putting away. And what are we putting away? The old former self. The Greek word is like man or human. So the human being that we were before, we are taking that and putting it off. And if you're like me, these are like super Bible-y words. We'll take off the former self and put that away. Like, that's like the weirdest thing ever to me. Like, is Paul like we're taking our former self, we're grasping it and taking hold of it, and we're laying the man, the human, the woman that we were before, and we're setting that aside. It like makes me think of like a snake like shedding its skin. It's just like it just kind of peels off. Sorry, Lou. Just kind of peels off and it's left over there. Yeah, it's just like I think it's just weird language, right? And I mean, do we say words like that now, I guess? You know, like Linda, just take off your old former self and live in your, yeah, there's just gonna take. I think the closest thing that I can think of is kind of what Daisy was saying. And that was a long time ago. That was in high school. I was a different person. That's who I was. That's not who I am. And yeah, that is who I am, but it's who I was, right? So I've taken off the high school, middle school Brandon because I don't want to be that Brandon anymore. I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to put on the new, adult. I pay taxes, that kind of thing. I don't want to put that on.
This goes back to what we were saying earlier about other people care more about
Huh.
how we're dressed
Hmm.
than I do. Is obviously not the top priority for me. I just get the body clothes so people don't freak out and die and have to pull their
Yeah.
eyeballs out.
Yep.
And but how other people observe me is more. They're more conscious of how I'm dressed than I am.
Hmm.
So if I put on a new person,
Huh.
are other people looking at me more than I'm looking?
It's a good question.
I hadn't thought of it until right now when they
Yeah.
comparison that other people, how other people perceive me may be more important than how I perceive
Hmm.
myself in a lot of ways because if they don't perceive me as a Christian,
Yeah.
I've kind of defeated.
Yeah. You've got Christian on the inside, but not Christian on the outside. And the Bible would say that you're lying to yourself if that's the case.
Well, I think of like, especially becoming a mother,
Hmm.
and like I'm a role model for my girls, and like, not that I don't feel like I've ever really dressed in a way that was not appropriate, but like being a lot more aware, like even swimsuits and things, things like that.
Mhm.
Just like being more aware in the sense of,
Mhm.
okay, what am I reflecting? What am I,
Yeah.
distraction or not, or that kind of
Yeah.
figuring that basically.
Yeah. And so to take that and and that's exactly what Paul does is he's making this spiritual. He's talking about he's not talking about physical clothing, but he's using clothing as a metaphor. But as we're taking off the old, we're taking off well, I know that Laurie knows that I've lied. She's know that I've cheated or that I have used terrible language or something like that. But I'm gonna take that off, and we're gonna put on something different. But taking that off, I mean, you just think if you've got a T-shirt that has a vulgar word, everybody that's gonna be looking at you is gonna say, "Can you? What? No way." But if you're wearing something that is God edifying and glorifying, then it's the opposite. And so we'll kind of complete that thought as we finish up there. But we're taking something off. We're shedding that skin. We're taking that old me, that old who I was, and we're laying that aside. In Colossians, Paul goes through this same metaphor, and actually, this is one of Paul's favorite metaphors. I feel like this take off, put on, old self, former self, new created self. He actually uses this same metaphor. Let me see in Colossians, Hebrews, James, 1 Peter, and Romans. That's a lot of letters where all to different people, but like he was onto something. He said something pretty cool, and he used it a lot, right? So why would Paul, before we get into what we're putting off, why would Paul use something so basic as like put off, take on clothes, like metaphor? Why would he use something so basic? Yeah. Yeah. More understandable, more basic. Yeah. I don't have to say, now, take the sin from your heart, pluck it, and put it over. We're shedding off our layers and putting on new layers. We're taking off the old and we're putting on. And how many people in Paul's day and Jesus' day were wearing clothes? Hopefully, well, except for the crazy naked guy. That's the only one I can think of. But everybody's wearing clothes. Even the peasants and the poor, most of them have one piece of clothing, a tunic or some underwear or something like that they're wearing. Because just like Lou said, we're like that's what we do. Ever since the fall, we're putting on clothes to hide ourselves, to hide our shame, or to hide what people can actually see or something. We use clothes and stuff too. And so everybody connects with this metaphor, no matter who you are. And now I'll save that. I'll save that for the end. And Paul just loved this metaphor. And what does he want us to take off in verse 22? The old self, which what? Corrupt and deceitful, which is our former manner of life. I love these words. Corruption, like that's just like, I don't know, that's a very visceral word in my, like corrupt or caustic or like, let's see what that looks like here. Oh yeah, so he says the Greek here, I mean, it's corrupt or defiled or like tainted. So you have, a white shirt that you accidentally spill wine on or something. Ah, man. Spoiled and withered. Ooh, see, I like those words too. And it wasn't until I was kind of studying these words that realized that those words like corrupt, defiled, tainted, we don't have time to get into this a lot, were used a lot when you're talking about the temple. Like you can't go into the temple when you're defiled or whenever you are unclean or something. There's a purity that you have to have coming into the temple, and you can't come if you've got X, Y, and Z. I mean, just look at Leviticus and stuff, all the ways that we can purify ourselves and stuff too. And so here we are, we're tainted, we're withered, we're spoiled, we're corrupted. There's just something that's wrong with us. So there's a corrupted in our old self. And then I love the way that he says it. He says, through deceitful influences or lusts that seduce us into sin. That's kind of what one commentator put it in. So just to read that one time, we're putting off our old self, which belongs to your old life. It's corrupt through deceitful desires. Interesting. So our old lives were tainted, spoiled, and corrupt through what kind of desires? Deceitful desires. Has anybody else's version say anything different? Deceitful lusts. See, lust brings about a different, like it has a different connotation. Like it's more scary. Not most of the time whenever we think about it, we think of we sexualize the word, which is absolutely true. But to bring that word lust into like deceitful lust. Yeah. Yeah. Ah. Yeah, wait a minute now. Yeah. So here's deceitful desires. Where do our deceitful desires come from? They do come from the devil. And from say it again, Daisy. And our old selves, our own hearts, right? What are the words that God uses to talk about specifically people in the Old Testament that have deceitful desires? Talking about their hearts. They have hardened hearts. They have hard hearts, right? They're not flexible. They're not fleshy. They're just like it's just not working. And so he's saying here, our old life, right? Our former life was corrupt and tainted. There was something wrong with it. There was something impure about it because of our deceitful desires. So because of the heart of ourselves desiring stuff that is not good for us, desiring things and lusting over things that are not good for us, that's the reason that we're putting those things away, because it's tainting us. We can't come in front of God with those things. It's tainting us. And so he says, put those things away, right? And so in the Old Testament, he talks about, hard-hearted, and so just like from the beginning, we just fail to be the people that God created us to be. We just fail. So we need a new heart. In Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9, I use this verse with the teens all the time because in today's day and age, there's the popular phrase, man, just follow your heart. Just follow your heart wherever you want to go. And the Bible says, the heart is deceitful above all things, and it's desperately sick. Nice. So I'm going to follow this organ in my body that is deceitful above all things, and desperately sick. Jeremiah 17:9. And that's the hard part with following your heart, man. Because if I were to follow my heart, I'd be in a heap of trouble, man. Because my heart, normally, my heart of my former self wanted a lot of things, if not all things, that were directly opposite and in opposition to the life that Christ wants me to live. 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Because if I was just going to follow my heart, well, I can do whatever I want. Because, well, my heart wants this. My heart wants this food. My heart wants this girl. My heart wants this job. My heart wants these things. And I'll give up all the things that actually matter because I'm just following my heart. And the Bible would say, if you're following your heart, you're deceiving yourselves because your heart's sick. You've got a terminal issue with your heart. Don't follow your heart. That's the worst advice you could ever give somebody, is to follow your heart, because your heart's going to lead you into a place that leads you to be where Paul says, a place that is corrupt through deceitful desires. Oh. Yeah. Lee. Well, it's cool that you say that. Yeah. Well, it's cool that you say that, because in the next verse, he says, and be renewed in the spirit of your minds. That's pretty cool. But yeah, so in Jeremiah, let me just finish that thought. In Jeremiah 17, he says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Later on in Jeremiah 31, he says, so because of that, I'm going to give you a new heart. I'll give you a fleshy heart, a heart of mine. I will renew that. Just read, it's the whole chapter, all of Jeremiah 31. It's beautiful. He says, your heart is sick and gross and nasty and tainted and spoiled and withered. And no matter what you do, you're stuck in that because we can't save ourselves. So I'm going to give you a new heart. I'll give you something new. I'll give you something beautiful. I'll give you a way to follow me and to be my kind of person through the baptism of Jesus. He doesn't say that, but man, I'm going to give you a new heart. And that's through Jesus, and he offers that in Jesus. And that's in Jeremiah 31. So to kind of go where Lars going, Paul, I don't have time. That's so sad. I'm not even going to get to 24. This is the worst. But Paul in Colossians takes the metaphor taking off a step further, and he says that you need to put to death the sinful lusts living inside of you. So we're not just taking things off. We're executing those things and putting their necks in the guillotine. Like the things that are tainting us and the desires that are there, we're lobbing them off. We're killing them completely. Because I don't know about you, after I go and work out and get stinky clothes or something like that, have you guys seen those commercials where people take off their stinky socks and they throw them onto the side and they go, or they're so stinky and stuff? You take off those socks, but sometimes we put those socks back on, or we put that stinky clothes back on. Ugh. Can you imagine? But we do that spiritually. We take off this old stuff, and then we're like, you know what? I'll just put those on because they're a little bit more comfortable. And so Paul in Colossians is like, hey, let's axe those things. Let's take them and put them to death. Okay, let's finish this good stuff though, because we got 5 minutes to make it happen. 23, where Laria was going, and we need to be renewed in the spirit of your minds. Renewed in the spirit of your minds. What do you guys think about that verse? Because minds is a conscious decision, like the word minds is a conscious decision. You could have said hearts, or just be renewed in your spirit. What do you think? Yeah. Yeah, and I think that Paul's pointing at both. Of like, look at where we are desperately sick in our hearts, the things that we want, but the problem is also our minds too. So let's work through that. Let's renew the spirit of our minds at the same time. Absolutely, and thank you for bringing that out too. So the words put off and put on, right? Put off and put on. That. The form of both of those verbs are in the Middle Aorist tense. Isn't that fascinating? that those verbs are in the Middle Aorist tense. And that means nothing because who cares about the Middle Aorist tense? The Middle Aorist tense is not a one-time thing, but a continuous action. It's something that is never completed, but it's something that we continuously do over and over and over. And yeah, I mean, in Mark chapter 12, Jesus is quoting the Old Testament when he says, we need to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, and all of your strength. I'm going through a series with the teenagers right now where we're talking about our mind, and we're trying to learn about the gospel logically, and then we're asking questions logically of like, do we have good reason to believe in our faith? And to say that, at least for me, I don't think I was taught this. I think I felt this. When I go to church, it's all heart, it's all soul. Like whenever I come in here, I'm cut me, I bleed. Like I'm here, you know. And it's not that I'm purposefully checking my mind at the door, but the heart is more important. I don't think I was taught that. I think that's what I felt though. And Jesus reminds us here, as he has reminded all of the Old Testament as well, that we're not checking our brain at the door also. We're bringing both of those things in. We're renewing our mind because God doesn't want us to just blindly go into the fray to believe these things. He wants us to know and to understand the things that he has for us as well. So whenever he talks about the renewing of our mind, or the spirit of your minds, he's talking about let's intellectually understand. That's what we do in this class, right? That's what Marshall does in this class. We're going through this and intellectually with our hearts open and our minds open. We're looking at the words of God and allowing it to change our hearts by what? By understanding and learning more about his word. So the more that we understand and learn and grow in knowledge with his word, that changes the heart as well. So Paul is saying both. I mean, we need to have a shift in our heart. We're taking off the old heart, the heart that's dead and broken. We take that heart out and it's being replaced. God is replacing that with a new heart. And our minds are being renewed as well as we're continuing on in the mind and the spirit of our minds. Guys, I think we're going to make it, right? So we're putting on the new self, and we don't have time to go into the created in true righteousness and holiness, right? So we're renewed in the spirit of our minds to be put on the new self. So we took something off, we're putting something new on, created after the likeness of God in the true righteousness and holiness. So we're putting on what God intended for us at all the time. For us to, whenever God looks at us, he sees people that are right with him, people that are connected to him, people that are holy, they're consecrated, they're set apart, they're different. And ultimately, if Paul is talking about Jesus, which he is, he says, but that's not the way you learned about Christ. We're putting on something new, created after the likeness of God. Whenever we're putting on something new, it's like we're putting on Jesus. The clothes, our former self is dead and gone, but the clothes that we put on now makes us look like Jesus. So just like Lou said, does it matter what other people see whenever they look at us? Yeah, it does, because the waiter or waitress at wherever we're going to go eat today is going to look at you, and they have the opportunity to see Christ or to see some angry person about getting the side dish wrong on whatever it is. But there's a decision that is made. So remember, as we're talking the put on and put off, it's not just a one-time thing, it's a continuous action. If you were to, we're done. How many t-shirts would you say that you guys own? T-shirts. Give me a ballpark. That you own. Too many. I'm just regular t-shirts, you know. At least 9 or 10. Ah, I wish I was like that. I'm one of those like, why am I still wearing the college shirts that I got? I don't know, but I'm gonna keep wearing them. And too many. Between Morgan and I, it's just a stack. Right? Now think about this. That's how many clothes that you have. So if you were to say, I'm just going to wear a shirt once, at least for me, I'm going to wear a t-shirt once and not wear it again. For me, if Morgan's not in the picture and I'm just wearing all the t-shirts, I think it could probably go a month and a half. You could probably go. That's what I'm saying. It's dumb. Yeah, but I'm digging out the drawers and stuff like that too.
We live in a world where I've heard people say you're an outfit repeater. We get bullied. Yeah, we had girls in our school that would bully you for wearing the same outfit. That's the world we live in, though. Like that's a.
See, I'm so glad that we don't care about those things now. Like, golly, man.
One thing it's like, well, I wore this shirt like last week. Can I wear it again? And like without someone saying anything.
You want me to buy a new shirt every week? What is this?
That's how it is.
That's crazy. So think about this. How many times in your whole life have you put on a new shirt and taken off an old shirt? How many times? It's countless. It's countless. If not every single day of your life, sometimes 2 times a day, right? Because you get it gross, and then you got to put on pajamas, and then how many times have we done that, right? What I want us to kind of finish on, right, is that every single day, basically every single morning, right? Because that's what the Psalms say, or I think it's the Psalms, either Lamentations or the Psalms. We have new morning mercies. Every single morning we wake up and we've got new morning mercies. And so every morning we get to choose what we wear. And Marshall's going to go through what those looks like. If we're going to put on the dead again or take off, put on the new, whatever that is. But every morning we have a choice between what we're going to wear, right? So back to the beginning, does our appearance matter to other people? You say, unfortunately, it does, but I'm saying, man, it's awesome. What a blessing that it does. Because for us, sometimes the only way that people are going to see Christ is, man, they prayed before they ate their meal. That's weird. The way that they're treating their family, that's different. The way that they are abounding in love and grace and mercy, that's different. And we have the opportunity. Are we going to put on our old nasty like prison death grave clothes? Or are we going to put on something that's new and beautiful and lovely? And every single morning we have an opportunity to do that. So we've got an opportunity and a choice to do that. So put on the new stuff, take off the old, and be like Paul and acts and execute that stuff in the old. It's not easy, but I think that we can do it. Any questions or comments before we finish? 5 minutes over. Marshall's going to murder me. He's usually only like maybe 2 minutes over. But hey, Marshall. No, don't do it. Actually, Marshall, the code word is Lamentations. If you say Lamentations in next class, I will personally give you $10. All right? So he has to watch the whole class. I will do it. I will do it with all these. Don't tell him, because I'll have to actually go to the bank and get $10 because I only have a card. Oh no. That's deceitful desires of your heart. That's what it is. You want $10. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for putting up with me. I'm just the tech guy back here in the back. So you guys are awesome. Enjoy your lunch. See ya. Yeah.
Scotty posted a picture on Instagram last week that he hid $10 in one of the books in his office. And like, do you think Brandon can find it before I come back and sneak it on Sunday? So on Thursday, I went in his office and I was like